Being recorded.
All right, welcome everyone to our final SEL Speaker Series event of the year. It feels like just a few weeks ago, Greg and I were talking about who are some great speakers we know who could come talk. And it's flown by. So if this is your first event with us, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of kind of what Lausanne Learning is and our SEL program. And then if you've been with us the whole time, and again, I see some familiar faces, then thank you so much for investing this time in yourself and in your learning, because lifelong learning is so important to us. And I'm excited that it's important to you as well. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Amber, and I'm the director of Lausanne Learning. Lausanne Learning is a nonprofit based here at Lausanne Collegiate School in Memphis. Our mission is to engage students, empower educators, and transform schools. And one of the ways that we kind of live that mission is by partnering with other programs like the SEL program here at Lausanne Collegiate School. We have run conferences on mindfulness and SEL. We have the speaker series, we've done a book club, because truly the academics of professional development, the academics of lifelong learning are so important. But all the education in the world really can't do anything if you don't have that SEL component, right? If you don't have kind of the heart behind learning. So we have been really focusing the last couple of years, particularly during the pandemic, on how can we connect with our community in a way that not only talks about like math, which is super important, but also talks about how we learn and why we should learn these things and how we work with each other. So I'm excited to bring our final speaker series event of the year to you tonight. I'm going to just give you a couple of logistics, and then I'm going to turn it over to Greg to introduce our speaker. Just an FYI, obviously this is being recorded. You all heard the nice Zoom lady who told us it was being recorded. The recording will be available later this week. It'll be on our website where you signed up for this event. It'll also be on our YouTube channel, so you can watch this anytime, and you can watch all of our previous videos there as well. During the recording tonight, I will be in the waiting room, letting people in. I'll be in the chat if you have any questions or need tech help or anything. But this is also a very casual event. We're here to have fun and to learn and to talk. So feel free to jump in if you need to put questions in the chat, and to really, interact with our speaker and really get a lot out of this. So again, I'll be here in the chat, and if anyone needs me, please let me know. I'll also be putting any links in there for you as well. So I'm going to turn it over now to Greg Graber, who is the director of SEL here at Lausanne, to introduce our speaker tonight. Greg, I'll give it to you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And we are in for a real treat tonight. Timber Hawkeye is a widely acclaimed author, speaker, and I know he kind of disdains this term that I'm about to say in a formal sense, but he is a teacher as well, because he inspires people, maybe not in the traditional sense. I first found out about Timber about a decade ago. My wife and I used to vacation in a tiny little beach town outside of San Diego called Encinitas, California. And I was in this little bookshop, and I stumbled upon this book, Buddhist Boot Camp. And I read it pretty much in one sitting. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And Timber wrote a second book called Faithfully Religionless, and he's working on a third book currently. Timber is such a nice person. I saw that he was in the Memphis area speaking for a group, and I reached out through Instagram, and I convinced him to come and speak at my mindfulness class that I teach at Crosstown Concourse. And of course, he was a big hit. We became fast friends, and to make a long story short, he published my first book, Slow Your Roll. So I think you're really in for a treat tonight, and you're going to enjoy this. And I'm going to turn it over to Timber. Thank you so much, Timber.
Thank you, Craig. Yes, I definitely do not identify as a teacher, like you said. I think it's very important for myself and for all of us to forever identify as students, because so long as we consider ourselves students, then everything and everyone we encounter will be a teacher. And one of my favorite quotes is to trust those who seek the truth and be very leery of those who claim to have found it. And so my own journey began by asking questions. I moved from a really small town where I was born and raised in Israel. And my parents moved us from there, from that small little town in the Golan Heights, to San Francisco my first year of high school. And none of us spoke English. It was a huge culture shock. And despite my parents telling me to stick to my own, so to speak, I did the exact opposite. And I wanted to learn everything I could about everyone else, all the different cultures, all the different religions, only to uncover that there is this undergoing theme in all of them. And when I encountered Buddhism, which isn't a religion in a traditional sense, because there's no God, there's no creator, there's no beginning of time. In fact, what appealed so much to me is when you ask any Buddhist, how did the world begin? Who created it? They just go, I don't know. And I loved that honesty, that there's no theory, there's no story, there's just, I don't know. And the all of it, and I'm not going to talk about Buddhism necessarily, and even my books are not about Buddhism in the scholarly sense, but what resonated with me is all of it can be encapsulated into the concept that pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. Meaning the pain of life, of growing old, getting sick, dying, that's inevitable. There's no escape from that. But suffering through it is optional. We don't have to suffer through it. And the full equation is pain plus resistance equals suffering. So it's that which we resist. It's the white knuckling our way through life that causes a lot of tension within us. And the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And so if we go through life with a lot of tension within us, a lot of internal struggle, a lot of conflict internally, then we live in conflict with everything and everyone around us. And it's fascinating to me that we're an entire culture right now, just fast forward, moving into this notion of peace and calm, and everyone wants mindfulness and awareness, and yet there is a lack of almost a personal responsibility for it, meaning that we're looking to find peace or find balance, but it's not lost like it's, loose change under the car seat. It's that we're just going to find one day and go, oh, I found peace. I'm at peace now. It's something we create. Balance is something we create. And as far as the internal conflict, the way that we find peace is not by discovering it. It's by ending the conflict. The first and foremost, stop doing that which creates this turmoil within. And what I love is Gandhi once said that happiness, which is what we're all after, is when your beliefs or your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all in alignment. When your thoughts, words, and actions are all in harmony, then you can live at peace and be happy. And by definition, therefore, if we're not happy, my go-to process is to look at my thoughts, words, and actions and go, where am I out of alignment? Where am I not congruent? Where am I saying or believing one thing, but my actions prove another? Because when I do that, I'm creating dissonance. I'm creating conflict within me. And of course, I can't live at peace with anyone else if I'm not even at peace with myself. So it's kind of like the world is just holding up a mirror to all of us constantly, and just look what you're doing. Look what you're doing, and we think the world is doing something to us, but I think it's giving us the lessons, the people, the teachings, the teachers that we need in our lives in order to learn what we need to learn to move on. As Pema Chodron says, a lesson will repeat itself until you learn it. And that's why we keep repeating different relationships, different challenges. It's because we haven't yet learned the lesson. And one of the biggest obstacles, I think, and I'm going to go on a whim here and claim, is that we identify as victims a lot without even realizing it. And it's very difficult to find a solution, to even find a way out, to even be presented or see a way out from that victim mentality. So when we start any sentence with saying, oh, I have to, whatever it may be, I have to go to work tomorrow, I have to do, it's like we come to it from a place of victimhood, of I have no choice, I'm stuck, this is my only option, poor me. And that kind of becomes our mantra, that becomes the lens through which we view the world. And people say, well, I tell them, you don't have to go to work tomorrow, you choose to go to work. And people would argue, I don't choose to go to work, I have to go to work, I have to pay the mortgage. And it's like, well, the idea is you have to pay the mortgage because you chose to buy that big house. You didn't have to do that. So you get to go to work, you get to pay mortgage, you get to live the life you've chosen. And I'm not saying I'm victim blaming. There are many instances where we are not responsible for the circumstances in which we have ended up, but we are 100% responsible to get out of them, or even to look at them from a different angle. And that's what I love about the word responsibility. If you break it down, it's responsibility, the ability to choose our response. And that is something that is within our control. We identify as victims every time we say, I can't help the way I feel. Or worse yet, we blame someone else. You make me feel blank. No one can make you feel anything. You can say something really offensive to me, and then I can choose to be offended. But if I give you all of my power, then again, I'm left powerless. I'm left as a victim, and that becomes the soundtrack to my life. That becomes the score. That becomes the mantra that is playing constantly. And many of us wake up every morning going, oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm not rich enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not successful enough. And that becomes our story. And everything in the world affirms that for us. But if we were to change that narrative and go, how can I find a way out of this? How can I look at this from a different lens? Then it's very empowering. And an exercise that I've done that has definitely given me many of the tools that I still use today is we were meditating, and we were instructed to think of a very sad moment in our lives. And in the moment that we did that, and we were guided through, who was with us, and what were we wearing, and what were the sounds, and all that stuff. What was going on? Was it the moment that someone close to you died? Was it the moment your dog ran away? Was it the sad moment when you went through a divorce? What was that sad moment? And as we started going through that, just sitting there in the room meditating, like many people's posture started slouching, and they started being sad, and some people even started tearing. And then we were asked to think of the happiest moment in our lives, whether it be that was a surprise birthday party, or when we got married, or maybe when we got divorced, whenever that happy moment was. And everyone's posture straightened up and smile spread across their face. And what was powerful about that exercise is that we didn't move, we didn't change, nothing outside of us changed. And yet we just went from crying to giggling through the power of our own thoughts, through the power of our own minds. And that was just transformative for me. So I'm gonna, I want this to be more of a discussion than a talk, but I want to share with you something that my teacher shared with me that has helped me a lot on my own journey. And I haven't shared it publicly very often because it's kind of a silly story, but I started sharing it during the pandemic when I started doing one-on-ones with people, and everyone was just like, this is brilliant. Why haven't you not talked about this before? And I thought, well, because I found it helpful, but I didn't know if others would. And so now when there is, like Greg said, a third book coming out, and I'm going to do another tour, I think I'm going to start every talk with this story and see if it lands as well as it did with me. And my teacher told me that in India, they have these bazaars. It's kind of the closest thing you and I can relate it to is an outdoor farmer's market. So not a store, not a mall, but just an outdoor market with vendors, tables, booths on both sides, red dirt, blue sky. India, it's hot. There's lots of people, and they're selling anything and everything from bananas and papayas to flowers and fish and spices and saris, beautiful, colorful fabric blowing in the wind, and lots of aromas and sounds, and you name it. It's busy. It's a lot going on. And they thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had these celebratory parades that go through the market? And with this being India, they're like, why don't we have elephants in the parade? And the elephants are covered in beautiful fabric and bells. And the problem, when they started the parade, every time the elephant walked past a vendor in a booth selling mangoes or bananas or whatnot, the elephant would reach for the bananas and shove it in his mouth. And he would reach for the fruit and shove it in his mouth. And he's knocking things over. He's eating inventory that they can't afford to do without. And just a complete chaos in what was supposed to be a very celebratory parade that goes through the market. And they thought, well, how can we have the market and the parade and the elephants and none of the chaos? And I realized that if you give the elephant a stick of bamboo to bite down and chew on at the beginning of the parade, he will walk through the entire market. And it doesn't matter if they're selling bananas or mangoes. He's not going to reach for them to shove in his mouth because he can't. There's already something in his mouth. So he'll just keep walking. And that is how my teacher taught me what a mantra is. He said a mantra is a grounding truth. It's what keeps you grounded. It's that bamboo stick that you, as long as you keep it in your mouth, you can walk gracefully through life. But, you know, when people hear the word mantra, they think of some chant in some foreign exotic language where people sit on a meditation cushion burning incense going Nam Myoho Renge Kyo or Om Mani Padme, and it is, but that's not what my teacher taught me. He taught me that the mantra is the bamboo stick. It's a grounding truth so that no matter what happens, no matter what you encounter on the market, you can walk gracefully through it. Now, I can't give you a mantra. I can't tell you what it should be. You know, I know Transcendental Meditation says, give us $7,000 and we're going to give you your own unique mantra and you can't tell anyone else what it is. It's not what I'm talking about. The grounding truth, I can give you an example that if the idea is to eliminate the internal conflict, like I said in the beginning. And the beauty is that if I was speaking with, say, a teenage girl who, on the one hand, was born and raised to believe that she is a child of God, that she is perfect, she's beautiful, she's whole, and one day someone is going to find her irresistible. She knows this to be true. This is her truth. This is what she was raised with, and she believes it until she gets on Instagram. And all of a sudden, that truth that she's beautiful and she's perfect and she's whole and she's complete is gone. And all of a sudden, it's replaced with, oh my God, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I'm so unattractive, no one's ever going to love me. And I'm doing this because it's just like the elephant grabbing all the fruit that it sees. But if at any point the elephant does start reaching for things, the person walking next to the elephant is not demonizing the person selling bananas, saying, how dare you sell bananas and distract my elephant? You know, the person who is walking next to the elephant doesn't demonize the elephant for being an elephant. The moment he sees the elephant reaching for the fruit, all it is just like, hey, the elephant must have dropped his bamboo stick. I just got to pick it up and give it up to him again. And the moment the teenage girl is starting to have those thoughts of, oh my God, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I'm so unattractive, it's just all of those reminders are just an indicator that, hey, you dropped your grounding truth. And the only reason you're reaching for these things is because you don't have it anymore. You need to return to your mantra. You need your bamboo stick, and then you can walk gracefully through life. Tying that back into what Gandhi said, that, you know, happiness is when what you think, say, and do is all in harmony, when you live in line with your values. Well, how can we live in line with our values if we don't know what our values are? You know, if we don't have a bamboo stick, if we don't have a grounding truth, then we will reach for anything and everything that's offered. But if we get clarity on, these are my values, this is what I believe, not what was handed to me, not what was given to me, but what I believe in my heart is true. And then someone offers something else. And even if they disagree with us on every point, it doesn't matter, because if we have confidence in our own truth, in our own reality, then it doesn't matter how someone else sees it. And I take it to an extreme. If someone tells me that the sky's purple and I believe it to be blue, I don't need to argue with them. I don't need to start yelling at them and screaming at them and prove to them and get 10 other people to say, no, it is blue, and ask Alexa to confirm it. I just listen to this and saying, tell me more about your purple sky. And I can walk away from that conversation with newfound knowledge that to some people, the sky looks purple. And that's because the blueness of my sky is not jeopardized by how purple someone else perceives it to be. So that this whole notion that is, you know, in Buddhism and everywhere else of letting go, it's so foreign to so many people. You know, it's like if someone's really stressed out and you tell them to relax, good luck with that. You know, it's just, and so if someone's spending their entire life white knuckling their way through it, going, I'm right and they're wrong, and you tell them to let go, letting go is too far removed from where they are. So my approach is not forget letting go, loosen your grip, just a little bit. Allow for the possibility that to some people, the sky looks purple or whatever it is. And that's why in Buddhist boot camp, the very first, I made it like if you want to call it a grounding truth, or the first principle of Buddhist boot camp is that the opposite of what you know is also true to somebody else somewhere else because of their time, place, and circumstance. And it's not just the first principle, it's the only principle. And so if you make peace with the fact that the opposite of your truth is just as true, is just as real to somebody else as your truth is to you, everything else becomes a lot easier. But if you believe that there is a universal truth, notice how it always is conveniently enough your truth. And I truly believe that there's a way for us to be confident in our reality and our truth without needing to minimize someone else's, or as Yogananda called it, feeling tall by cutting off the heads of other men. We definitely don't need to be doing that. I think there's room for all of us. I think there's perspective in that every single time we feel our buttons getting pushed, that's not an indication that we need to do away with those people or that something's wrong with the world. It's how can we get to a place where we don't have any buttons that can be pushed? And that's what I love about mindfulness. The opposite of mindfulness is mindlessness. We spend our entire life mindlessly reacting to everything that's happening in the world instead of responding. And so with mindfulness, we introduce a pause between impulse and response. And I love that pause. And in that pause, we ask ourselves, what is my grounding truth? Who am I in relation to what is happening? How am I about to do something that is contradictory to what I say I believe, whatever that may be? And because I know that if I do that, if I say, oh, I care about my health, but I'm about to do something really unhealthy, I'm about to eat or drink something that's not healthy, even though I claim to be very concerned with my health, then the moment I do that, I'm creating an incongruence within me. I'm dividing myself into all these two individuals are not going to just beat each other up and not get to agree because I am going against my own word. The war, forget the war outside. The war is now within me. So the idea is, how can I make peace within? I would say the war we see outside of us is nothing but a reflection of the war within all of us. But we can't fix the world out there. We can, however, fix the world in here. And the moment we do that, we realize there is no out there and in here. It's all one. And when we become more peaceful, our world becomes more peaceful. And we are part of this process of bringing more peace to the world, rather than I'm against this, I'm against that. I'm like, don't tell me what you're against. Tell me what you're for. It's promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate. Because when you hate the hater, you become a hater. And yet you feel like your hatred is somehow superior to someone else's hatred. Your hatred is justified while someone else isn't. So that's why I said about this practice of mindfulness is really just the world holding up a mirror to you going, look how you are contributing to your own anguish. You're doing this. You're blaming everyone else, but what role are you playing? And I love that empowerment. It's not about victim blaming. It's looking within going, I have a choice in this. I can make myself happy or I can make myself miserable. The amount of work is the same. So again, I would love for this to be more of a discussion. And Amber, if any questions came in, or if you have any, let me know so we can work through this. I just saw that question from Lori. It's not about talking to anyone else. It's can we be at peace with what is and trust that this is necessary for reasons far beyond our comprehension? Meaning what is happening, what is unfolding is happening so that we can raise our awareness of, hey, this is off. This is not resonating with us. How can I be part of the solution, not be part of the pollution? Because if I'm sitting on my soapbox saying I'm right, they're wrong, then we are no different than them thinking we're right, they're wrong. I mean, I come from such a war-torn country where both sides are clearly at fault. And yet, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. So, as many poets and philosophers and scientists and psychologists try to explain love for eons, I really think the Dalai Lama nailed it when he said, love is the absence of judgment. The moment there's judgment, there's no love. And so even if you're coming from this place of, I'm right, they're wrong, oh my gosh, immediately you put yourself in this spot of I'm superior by making someone else inferior. But what if there is no superior and inferior? What if we're all one? If we're all the same, we're all struggling, we're all trying to figure out how do we be happy in a world that is already broken without having to fix the world, but by realizing that it is beautiful as is, and whatever is unfolding, no matter how uncomfortable. Think about how many people in your own life have had to go through some medical diagnosis, some heart attack, like my uncle, 3 times before he's like, oh, I need to slow down. The first heart attack didn't teach him that lesson. The second, the third, only the fourth. Finally, he's like, oh. So if we in our own personal lives have yet to learn the lessons that we needed to learn in order to take care of ourselves, in order to be healthy, then think about collectively as a community, as a planet, how many times are we going to have to learn the same lesson over and over again before we go, oh, that's what you meant about the ice caps melting. It was so far from where I was, I couldn't even wrap my mind around what that means. But now that there's water shortage, now that there's food shortage, now I'm getting it. But it took that in order for me to get this. And so the invitation is to be grateful for all of it, even the discomfort, and say yes to whatever comes and thank you to whatever was. And man, that sense of gratitude from which to view the world is so much more empowering than the sense of entitlement or victimhood. I don't know if any of this makes sense, or again, if you have any questions or scenarios where you're challenging, like, yeah, but my cousin, or yeah, but my spouse, or yeah, but my parents. But where are we in all this? How can I, having gone through everything I've gone through, can come out on the other side and say, nothing ever happened to me. It happened for me to learn from, grow from, and most importantly, move on from. And it's so liberating to see that there was a lesson there. And even the point of forgiving those who have, quote unquote, wronged me, I want to be able to say that needed to happen. I needed that experience, apparently, because I wasn't learning it without it. So there's, you can call it suffering grace, you can call it awakening, you can call it mindfulness. The names, the labels we give all of these things are not as relevant. What I'm sharing is nothing new. There's nothing in the book we don't already know. There's nothing in my podcast we don't. They are just reminders of what we so often forget because we're so busy mindlessly living. So the idea of mindfulness is to bring that awareness back into, what am I about to eat? What am I about to drink? Am I feeding my cure, or am I feeding my illness? What am I doing? How am I responsible? And yeah, we can play the victim and blame big pharma, and we can blame the industry. Yes, we can. But is that going to help us? Or can we say, how do we get off that treadmill? How do we get off this path and get on a different one? Because clearly there are other options. And that's what I love about so much of this, is that we become aware of how many options there are. When people tell me they feel stuck, I simultaneously, and I hate to admit this, but I simultaneously feel compassion and empathy. And yet I'm reminded of all the talk. I speak a lot in prisons, and more often than not, I hear so much from the inmates telling me how grateful they are for their time in prison, because this is an opportunity to learn, and decide what kind of person they want to be in the world. So when they get out, they can introduce a whole new version of themselves. So they're like, I feel so free to redefine who I am and start over. And yet when I give talks in yuppie yoga studios, and I hear people say, oh my God, I feel so stuck, I'm thinking, the men in prison feel free and you feel stuck. And so clearly there's a mindset here. And how can we change our mindset? Which, just like in that meditation room, we went from crying to laughing. How can we change it to where our inner peace is not disturbed by what's going on around us? And it doesn't mean that we stick our head in the mud. Absolutely not. When we feel anger, when we witness something that is not reconciling with our view of the world, it doesn't mean that we just go, oh, c'est la vie. No, absolutely not. Anger is a really good indicator that, hey, something's off. It's like that warning sign, that alarm going off. Hey, siren, pay attention. This isn't working. But when we feel the anger, it's important not to react in anger, because then we're just trying to add fuel to the fire to put it out. And so promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate. I keep going back to that. Like, yes, this is happening in the world, but how can you change who you are when you respond to it? We've gotten so many opportunities over the years to practice this. And time again, there have missed opportunities in our personal relationships, politically, culturally, racially. These are all invitations for us to own up, like, hey, here is where I come up short, and here's where I can take one step forward. Tiny, maybe, but at least it's progress. It's better than stagnation. Amber, is there anything going on? Like, tell me. I don't know if someone wants to raise their hand on Zoom, or I don't want to keep going, because I'll get into quantum physics if you don't stop me.
Well, so there aren't any questions in the chat, but I just, when you first started talking about, like, when you see something that goes against your beliefs or that makes you angry, you don't just want to react. And my immediate reaction was not very mindful, because I was like, no, sometimes people are wrong and I need to tell them. And
so, well, let me pause right there. Sometimes people are wrong according to you. And
right.
So those words, according to me, are so important, because we tend to forget that. We think, well, if everyone drove like I drive, if everyone saw the world the way I did, and we all live peacefully, but and that could be huge politically, and it could be in your private relationships, where all of a sudden your spouse is you move in with them and they put the soap first in the washing machine and then the clothes, and you're like, no, you put the clothes and then the soap, and you start arguing about the quote unquote right way to do laundry. And it's like, that's never going to solve it when you have two people on opposite side of the couch saying you're the problem. Does that make sense? But you feel superior in your I'm right. and it's that superiority complex, and specifically that creates this. I didn't mean to stop you, but it's that allows this to perpetuate and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you were talking more about it, though, I thought about the particular situation I was thinking about, which it's a very long story, but I'll keep it really brief. That I had someone that I was kind of fortunate enough to know in my day-to-day life, and they had an opinion that I just felt was atrocious and abhorrent to me. And it was very kind of like, I know it just came from a place of not knowing. And my first reaction was to be like, what an idiot, like, why are you like this? And I used what my mom refers to as my big words voice, and that didn't do anything. And so I was like, okay, well, that doesn't work. And finally, I just said, tell me why you think that. And then I could kind of, and I'm not perfect at this, but then I could kind of ease into mindfulness with this person and say, no, wait a second. They don't think the way I do, and that's okay. But they also have a totally different experience than I do. And now that person and I trade books about the topic that we disagreed about.
Nice.
And we still disagree.
Yeah, no, and that's the idea, is that we don't need to come to agreement with everyone. Absolutely not. We just need to allow space for, again, the opposite of what you know to also be true. And one of those mindfulness exercises that we do, and I know that Camila had a question, and so I want to get to that. But we used speaking of sticks, we talked about a bamboo stick, but we used a tongue depressor. It's kind of like a popsicle stick, but the wider one. And we wrote on it, on one side, tell me more, in the sense that you pretend you're spending your entire life online and in real life with that stick in front of you like this, and it's pointing out to the world and says, tell me more, tell me more, tell me what you think I should do. Tell me how you think I should live my life. Tell me who I should vote for. Tell me whether I should get vaccinated. Tell me about tell me more. Tell me how beautiful you think I am. Tell me how terrible and ugly and atrocious you think I am. Tell me more. And we can do that because on the inside of that stick, the side that's facing us, we wrote down, this has nothing to do with me. And so as long as we are constantly reminding ourselves that when someone else shares their truth with us, they're telling us who they are. It has nothing to do with who we are. This is their truth. This is their reality. And we can allow space for that. Okay, well, now I know that in the world, there are some people who believe the earth is flat and there's some people who believe it's not. Okay, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Gosh, my life would be so much easier if I just allowed that to be. But can I use this opportunity to look within me and go, am I being contradictory? Is there a part of me that is hostile? Is there a part of me that's violent? Because in nonviolent communication, NVC, the word should is considered one of the most hostile words in our language. And we are constantly shoulding all over everyone and everything and ourselves. And so bringing awareness of every time we even think, oh, well, they shouldn't do that and they shouldn't do this. And should is just another way to bully someone. You know, it's just like unsolicited advice is a form of violence. If someone didn't ask you and you just offering your advice, you're bullying them. And it's like, and no one wants to think of themselves as a bully. So the invitation is to go, what is my role in all this? I don't want to keep going. Camila, go ahead.
Timber, I just wanted to share, this is mind-blowing in the sense that I, prior to hearing this dialogue, would say that I'm very open-minded and I'm very non-confrontational, but it definitely challenges me to unlearn some things. And I think it's what's even crazier, I guess, it was I never really thought about approaching things this way. And I'm just thinking, even within my classroom, if I'm able to teach children to first see themselves, man, it would eliminate a whole lot of things, especially when they become adults, like the situation that happened today in New York. So thanks for sharing this. I just wanted to share that.
No, thank you. It's really, it's part of, you know, like you said, teaching children this. It's like we were ourselves were taught a language, but we were not taught how to communicate. So what happens is, when we don't know that all of our feelings are valid, our anger, our jealousy, our fear, they're all valid, but feelings are not facts. Feelings are indicative of a met or an unmet need. And so when we feel jealous when we're in a relationship, then we tend to basically express our jealousy and make the other person wrong and have to do something. But what if we understood that jealousy is just a feeling that's indicative of an unmet need? What is that unmet need? Well, I need to feel more secure. I need to feel a little more loved and protected and cared for. And I'm not feeling that, which is why this jealousy is coming up. So if we can explain our unmet need rather than express our feeling, then we can get closer to understanding one another and making requests of one another rather than making demands of one another without ever actually getting vulnerable enough. And with men, it's even more difficult because men, we are taught that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. But I think it's our greatest strength, because when you expose yourself completely, so honestly and vulnerably in transparency, my gosh, there's so much to love. But when we close up, when we shut down, when we put a wall between us and someone else and then get mad at them for not getting close. So yes, with children especially, but not only because we weren't taught this. You know, we were given a language, but none of the communication tools. So it's like we're trying to unscrew a screw, but we're using a butter knife instead of a screwdriver. And so I think of mindfulness as just having the right tool for us to navigate through the world and be the peace in the world. Forget find peace in the world or create, but be that peace that we're looking to find. Can we do it with a butter knife? Sure, but it's a lot harder, you know. And mindfulness, it doesn't make other people less irritating. Mindfulness makes us less irritable. That's the beauty of it. Other people are still going to do what they're going to do. Let's go back to the market. Elephants walking through it. You don't demonize the guy selling bananas saying, how dare you distract my elephant? You don't demonize other people for being who they are. You go, how can I walk gracefully through the market? You know, and yeah, whatever that may be, whatever distracts you, if you don't have that bamboo stick, if you don't have that grounding truth of this is where I am, and if I consider myself peaceful, then it's my responsibility to respond peacefully. But if I consider myself peaceful, I give a talk somewhere, and I held up these pictures, these headshots that were taken in a public space of all these people's faces, and they're all like mid-scream. They're all like, you know, and I'm like, do you know who these people are? There were pictures of peace activists but there was just nothing peaceful about them. And so the invitation is for everything to be in harmony. And man, that just sounds and feels like it resonates so much more. It's like reconciling everything within us, our thoughts, words, actions. And then we can sleep at peace, we can live at peace, and then we can die in peace. But until then, it's constant conflict and turmoil and what's next, as opposed to, man, I'm so grateful for all these opportunities and all these lessons, and trusting yourself that if there is an obstacle, if there is a challenge, it's not there in your way of success, of happiness. Overcoming that obstacle is your journey. What I love, Stephen Batchelor is one of my favorite authors, and we often talk about a spiritual path or whatever path you are in life. And he said, when you think of a path, you think of an area in the forest where all obstacles have been removed, and you're in the forest and you look around like, oh, there's the path. Problem is when you see that and you see a path in the forest, that means someone was there before you and they removed all those obstacles. And yes, you can take that path, but it will only take you where they went. And it may not be where you want to go. So you go where you want to go. And yes, you may encounter a boulder or an obstacle. That doesn't mean that's not your way. It means that overcoming that obstacle is part of your journey. It's going to give you the tools you need to overcome the next one. But if we don't use these as learning opportunities, as teachable moments, then we're never going to overcome them. We're never going to be able to walk through the forest, come what may. Am I making sense? I'm sorry, Amber, is there any, I don't want to, I know, I mean, Camille was really good about raising her hand on Zoom, and I don't see anyone else doing that, but.
No, you're making total sense to me. I'm over here like writing notes and, thinking, and I don't see any questions, but there is an interesting comment that I thought, someone did say, please talk about quantum physics. I won't totally understand any of it, but I bet it would.
No, this is not the time or the place. So it was more of a joke. It was just, the idea of when you take a thought and you just unpack it, it's just going to keep going. And so I'm trying to keep this, like I do with my book, like I do in my podcast, to, something really applicable, something just that we can all implement into our daily lives. You say you love animals. Well, does your toothpaste choice reflect that belief? Or was your toothpaste tested on animals and you just like to think of yourself as or is, what I mean? Just little things like that. Is you call yourself an environmentalist, but you eat animals. Like, okay, well then you can't do both. You can do one, but you can't, what I mean? Just eliminate the conflict, whatever your truth. And it doesn't matter. We don't all need to agree on everything. It's not about us agreeing. It's about us living in line with our own truth, whatever that may be. And that's why I want to keep it really on the ground floor and on basics of where am I creating my own turmoil and how can I stop? That's what I'm looking to accomplish. That's what the teachings have helped me do, is evaluate, to kind of take an inventory of my own life, my own thoughts, my own actions. And another thing Gandhi said that kind of stings is your actions convey your priorities. No one likes to hear that, because we think so often that our what we believe and how we act in the world is a reflection of who we are. But oftentimes we say that, let's say, our family is the most important thing in the world to us, and yet we spend more time at work than we do with our family. Or we say our health is really important to us, but our choices don't reflect that. And so your actions convey your priorities. So if you're trying to figure out what your values are, look at your actions. And I'd say, if I was to leave you with any sort of homework assignment, figure out what your core values are, write them down, and then figure out how you're currently living your life, and see where there's discrepancy. And that's where you have some work to do. It's just an invitation for you. No one else is telling you who you should be or what you should do. It's you inviting yourself to live in harmony. I mean, what could be greater than that? It's not coming from the church. It's not coming from the government. It's coming from inside of you, telling you this is how you live at peace with yourself and the world around you. And it's, I think, the greatest gift you'll ever give yourself. And it's not like you do it once, you arrive, and that's it. You reach some plateau and you're going to be at peace forever. It's moment by moment of just constant mindfulness practice that's just so enriching. It enriches every experience from having lunch to going to sleep. It's just, it changes who you date. It changes where you work. It changes everything. And it brings a sense of purpose, a sense of, my gosh, like a driving force behind everything you do. And if nothing else, I think we can all use more purpose in our lives. So I don't know how long I need to keep going for, but it's a lot of information. I know I dumped a lot. The idea, much like in the podcast, the Buddhist Bootcamp podcast, every episode is less than 10 minutes long. Just like every chapter in the book is only a page long. But the idea is I want to give people, I want to plant the seeds for thought, but then leave you alone to do the thinking on your own. I don't want to tell you what to think. I just want to tell you to think, if that makes sense. And that's the invitation, is just to bring awareness to where do I fall short. And you can see this in Judeo-Christian, where don't point out what someone else is doing wrong. Look at yourself. This is in yoga also, stay focused on your own mat before you start looking at everyone else. This is applicable in every area of life. And we are a part of the whole. We are responsible for all of it. The most glaring example that I often use about how disconnected we are from the reality of us being part of a much bigger picture is anytime someone says they are stuck in traffic. You're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic. Saying you're stuck in traffic implies everyone else is in your way, your highness, and it's just this notion, my goodness, it's this sense of entitlement that puts us at the top and everyone else below. And I truly believe we don't need to belittle anyone else in order to feel confident about our truth, our reality. And that's my message. That's what's enriched my own life. It's given me a purpose. And I'm committed to walking this path. It's not just about doing the talk. It's working with students, working in prisons. Every time someone buys a book from my website, another copy is donated to the Prison Library Project. Like, that's the idea, is to bring the correctional back into correctional facilities. And believe it or not, that's what I get the most pushback from, is people saying, why are you wasting your time on those people? I'm like, those people are going to be your neighbors tomorrow. Do you want them to have learned mindfulness and meditation? Or do you want them to have learned how to better rob you next time? What do you want? Because that's the idea, is for them to pick up tools and for us to learn. And oh my gosh, there's just so much that we can each do in our own lives. Even if all you do is sit on your stoop and drink a cup of tea, you are part of the solution by not being part of the pollution right there and then. You don't need to do anything, but by just drinking tea, fair trade tea, but just doing that, you are not adding to the chaos. And that in itself is huge. That's one more person who's doing that. It's one less person adding to it. And that's a true gift. Anything you do above and beyond that is great. But as long as you can go to bed at night going, I did not make things worse. That's, I would say, my biggest problem with Buddhism is this notion, this mantra of do no harm. We can't do no harm. We can't. Our mere existence causes harm. But we can do less harm. And the moment I changed the wording from do no harm to do less harm, that made me curious. Well, how can I reduce the harm I'm causing in the world through my lunch, through my dinner, through the house I buy, through the neighborhood I go to, through where I shop, to whether I get Crest or Colgate? How can I reduce the harm in the world? It brings mindfulness to every single thing you do. So that's the invitation. I think that's plenty.
Timber, thank you so much.
Thank
first
you.
Of all. Secondly, can you let everybody know, because I'm getting some text and some direct message request, the best places to buy your books and your podcast and all your good stuff?
Yeah, so it's all on BuddhistBootcamp.com or timberhawkeye.com. From there, you have links to the podcast that's available on all podcast platforms. There's also a link to get the autographed books directly from me. I will personalize, sign, and send them to you. And every time you do that, by default, a paperback version of the same. You will get the hardcover, but the paperback will be sent to prisons because most do not accept hardcovers. There's also one monthly email. I only send out one email a month. It's on the first of every month with some food for thought. There's just so many opportunities on the site to, again, be part of the solution for your own growth. And I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the work that you're doing, bringing mindfulness awareness into education, into all walks. And this is why I started doing one-on-ones with people, because there's so much that we can do in our big group discussions when I travel. But there's also the personal, intimate level that I would go as far as to say we are all battling similar demons, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the reason for that is so that we can help one another. But nothing makes us feel more alone than our secrets. So if we're battling demons and we're not telling anyone about that, then we feel alone. We feel unseen. We feel unheard. And that just adds to our misery. And so we need to get off our egotistical self, thinking what I'm going through is special and unique to me. It's not. You're not the first one to go through it. Your struggle is real, but it's not unique to you. And the moment you realize that, you realize you're not alone. And there are others who are very willing and able to give you the tools you need to get through it. Because it's like anxiety, depression, there's no cure, but there are coping mechanisms. And that's what mindfulness gives you. It gives you that screwdriver, so you don't have to use the butter knife to get the screw out. So thank you again. I know Mary's just raised her hand, but I don't know if we're out of time. I'll let Craig, you decide, or Amber.
No, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary, unmute yourself. And hi.
Hi, I love what you say, and thank you. I came into this late, so I hope I'm not repeating something, but with this war going on, to avoid depression, I'm employing a lot of distraction. And that feels okay to me, but I know it's not mindfulness. But it also keeps me from going into a deep depression.
Absolutely. And so I love what you're doing. And I think that psychologically, how we handle it is oftentimes when, let's say someone says, I am angry, so imagine a pie chart, right? And the whole circle is just, I'm angry. It's red. Like, this is everything I am. And so then I often go, well, what else are you? And they go, well, I'm also feeling this, and I'm also feeling that. And all of a sudden the anger is not all encompassing. And so if I understand correctly, what you're doing is like, yes, there's a war going on, but that's not the only thing that's going on. There's a bunch of other stuff. So then you're not so overwhelmed by the war. You're like, all right, let's create balance, because otherwise, yeah, it is depressing. And we did talk about it earlier, about how raising our awareness that it's necessary for reasons far beyond our comprehension. And as Greg said, this will be recorded. This is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it again later on. But the distraction is, in many ways in meditation, we are often told, focus on one thing. And the power for me in meditation, it's not about trying to control your thoughts. It's about not letting your thoughts control you. And so what we do is we pivot. We guide our thoughts, like, oh, when it goes to the negative, let's give it something else. When it goes here, let's go there. And I think it's not even a Buddhist thing, but I meditate. I mean, yes, technically born Jewish and my ordained Buddhist, my mantra is Hindu, and my morning meditation is the Catholic prayer of St. Francis, but it's fine. But even St. Francis, I mean, it's leaps and bounds of psychological research. The prayer of St. Francis, if you're not familiar with it, is very much where there is hatred within, I shall sow love, where there's injury, pardon, where there's doubt, faith, where there's despair, hope, where there's darkness, light. It's about re-navigating. So when you're like, when I'm overwhelmed with the news, I need to pivot a little bit to balance it. So we create the balance we seek. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And you're absolutely, it's really smart to create the balance you need. Otherwise, you will be out of balance, and it's going to be overwhelming, and you'll feel like you're drowning. And that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to just get a breath of fresh air so you can better cope with what's happening, because otherwise you're of no use to yourself or anyone else. Then the war is not there. Then the war is inside of you. You're part of it. So thank you.
The war is all around us. It's
a reflection of the war within us. Then of course it's all around us. Yeah. That's why when people say, oh, inner peace is so selfish, I'm like, no, you don't understand. If I'm one more peaceful person in the world, there's a lot less war in the world. I'm one less violent person. I'm one less bully, I'm one more compassionate warrior. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's something we all struggle with, being overwhelmed with what's happening. There's always going to be stuff happening. And I think when you re-listen to this about how to walk gracefully through life by having that bamboo stick or a mantra, which will make more sense once you hear it.
Okay.
I think that's gonna bring the peace that you're seeking. So thank you. And thank you, Greg and Amber, for setting this up and for giving us this platform to reach more people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. Always feel more enlightened when I hear you speak. So
it's just a slap across the face. That's why.
It's good. I needed it. It's tough love. So looking forward to the third book as well. Please let us know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I told Greg before you got on the call, I said, I have just had a whole day and I am just worn out. And this has been re-energizing for me in a lot of ways, but also I'm that kid who loves homework. So now I feel like I have homework to do for myself.
Yeah.
That is energizing homework that I want to have my bamboo stick to walk through the market. So thank you.
It's empowering, it's grounding, it's all the things we're looking for. And we're thinking we're going to find it outside ourselves. Nope, it's not going to be on sale at 7-Eleven. Absolutely not. It's something for you to nurture and nourish and cultivate from within you, not from outside of you. It's not going to come from anyone else. Even this is not from me. This is ancient stuff. I'm just translating it to a language that people today can understand. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful night. Aloha.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. The recording will be available tomorrow afternoon-ish. As most of you know, if you've seen any of these before, I'll email you the link directly if you registered, but I'll also put it up on the website so you can access it anytime. Feel free, of course, you have my contact info. I've probably sent you too many emails. Please reach out to me if you have suggestions for speakers, if you have questions, if you'd like to be connected to the speaker, if you need links, whatever you need. So please have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday evening. And I hope that everyone got a lot out of that. So thank you so much.